much spider people are there?
Save it for Comic-Con.
Hey, welcome to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and my friends, we are living in the Multiverse Saga. Not just the Multiverse Saga of the MCU, but of movies in general. We saw a multiverse movie win Best Picture. DC's upcoming Flash film is confirmed to have some wild multiversal shenanigans, and Sony's animated Spider-Man films have been multiversal centric since even before the MCU. It's almost like we all woke up one day and wondered, what if my life would have gone a little better? So in this video, we're going to talk about the Sony Spider-Verse and how it's connected to the MCU's multiverse, and how Kang might appear in the final moments of Across the Spider-Verse. And he might be the main villain of the trilogy's final film, Beyond the Spider-Verse. So let's start with the Spider-Verse animated film. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was a multiverse-centric story that gave us our first introduction to Miles Morales on the big screen, as well as many other versions of Spider-Man, or as the MCU would call them, variants.
People like you veer off the path the timekeepers created. We call those variants.
Now, the difference between a multiverse and a Spider-Verse is that the Spider-Verse is Spider-Person centric. The overall Marvel multiverse would include every single Marvel universe in existence, even universes without a Spider-Man.
Most recently, there was an incident with Spider-Man.
What man?
The Spider-Verse, however, would only include universes with a Spider-Man or a Spider-Woman or even a Spider-Pig.
Spider-Pig, Spider-Pig, does whatever a Spider-Pig does.
In the comics, the Spider-Verse is connected by what's known as the Web of Life and Destiny. This is a three-dimensional configuration of the entire Spider-Verse that allows you to travel between different universes, similar to how the Sacred Timeline from Loki and Quantumania is a three-dimensional representation of the MCU's multiverse. Now, just like the Sacred Timeline has the TVA and the Citadel at the end of time, the Web of Life and Destiny has a lobby of sorts as well, a center point, if you will, very similar to what we've seen in the Across the Spider-Verse trailers. Every Spider-Person is connected to this multiversal web, and it's actually been theorized that this connection to the Web of Life and Destiny is what gives each Spider-Person their spider sense.
I thought that you could sense that with your Peter tingle.
So in the trailers for Across the Spider-Verse, we see these hexagonal-shaped portal tunnels that the Spider People use to travel the multiverse. Remember, Kingpin's machine from the last movie that allowed for multiversal travel was destroyed, and the Spider People thought they'd never see each other again. But with access to the Web of Life and Destiny, the Spider People can now navigate the Spider-Verse via a wristband, very similar to the time travel bands that we saw the Avengers use in Endgame. Now, speaking of the MCU, we've heard Sony's animated Spider-Man films reference the MCU. In the trailers for Across the Spider-Verse, we hear Miguel O'Hara's Spider-Man 2099 say this.
Don't even get me started on Doctor Strange and the little nerd back on Earth 1999-99.
This, of course, is referencing the events of Spider-Man No Way Home, when the MCU's Peter Parker, along with Doctor Strange, accidentally brought Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man plus their villains into the MCU.
Hi.
And come the end of that film, when the multiverse is cracking, we see lots of Spider-Verse characters like Kraven the Hunter, Rhino, Scorpion, and Black Cat coming into the MCU via Doctor Strange's botched spell. They're all being brought in because they know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. So, with Spider-Man 2099 referencing the events of an MCU film, that all but confirms that the multiverse of the animated Spider-Man films and the multiverse of the Marvel Studios MCU films and the Multiverse Saga are from the same cinematic universe. Now, Spider-Man No Way Home had basically already confirmed that the MCU and the Sony Spider-Verse shared a multiverse. No Way Home is an MCU film, and it canonized other Sony Spider-Man universes as part of this same multiverse. We've got Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man universe, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man universe, as well as the Venom universe. We saw Venom enter the MCU at the end of Venom Let There Be Carnage, and that ended up not going anywhere. But still, Venom did get to visit the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We also saw Michael Keaton's MCU Vulture from Spider-Man Homecoming jump over to Sony's Venom universe in Morbius. It's just hands down one of the worst post-credit scenes of all time. I mean, why would the MCU Vulture get sent to the Venomverse? That's not even how the spell worked. The spell was bringing everyone who knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man into the MCU and not kicking them out. And by the way, as long as we're on the topic of this, how in the hell is Miles Morales not in the MCU yet? Because we met Donald Glover already and he said Miles Morales was coming. And Miles Morales would have been like, what, 10, 15 years old? And that was like 6 years ago, even if Miles got blips of, person, you're doing it again. Right. You're sorry. let's talk Kang. So the Multiverse Saga of the MCU has only just begun. In the Loki series, we see the Sacred Timeline, a circular construction of approved universes flowing parallel to one another. Now this toned down multiverse was being overseen by He Who Remains, a variant of Kang the Conqueror. Now when the Loki variant, Sylvie, kills He Who Remains, we see the Sacred Timeline deconstruct and turn into a vast and ever-expanding multiverse. A multiverse that allows for countless realities and Kangs to exist. And then, in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania's post-credit scene, we see this new council of Kangs ruling over the multiverse. Now, we have speculated that the Kang that we saw sucked into the power core in Quantumania will go on to be the Kang who conquers the multiverse, defeats all of his variants, and eventually become He Who Remains. We've got lots of great videos here on the channel breaking that down. Now, at this year's CinemaCon, our very own Colton Ogburn got to see 15 minutes of Across the Spider-Verse, and he says that we may have gotten a Kang the Conqueror tease in those 15 minutes. So let's jump over to the TV here and have Colton tell us a little bit about what he saw.
Okay, so at CinemaCon, Sony showed us Gwen and Miles meeting again for the first time since they parted ways in the last film, thinking that they would never see each other again. Gwen is now sporting this wristband that allows her to be able to travel between universes. As she and Miles are swinging through New York City, she tells him about this multiversal group of spider people, and she mentions that they're trying to stop the multiverse from collapsing, which is what we hear Kang say he's trying to do in Quantumania. And that's also what He Who Remains, a former Kang, as well as the TVA, said they were trying to prevent from happening in the Loki series.
Total destruction of, well, everything.
So I think that in Across the Spider-Verse, we're primarily going to be focusing on a rift between Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2099. But in the background, I think there will be this greater thread that comes to the surface come the end of the film and then into the third film Beyond the Spider-Verse. And that great threat, I think it's going to be Kang. And also, I think that we could be seeing...
Okay, thanks Colton, shut up. So, I'm really liking this idea of the Spider-Verse films loosely being part of the MCU's Multiverse Saga, and I think that Beyond the Spider-Verse could feature other Marvel characters in animated form, and they could feature Kang the Conqueror as its main antagonist. And maybe we could even see a live-action version of this Miles Morales appear in Avengers Secret Wars.
Person, that all sounds great, but Spider-Man 2099 called the MCU Earth 199999. What's that about? I thought the MCU was Universe 616. Are you sure this is all connected?
Great question. Okay, so in the real world, we categorize different Marvel universes by numbers to explain that they are different realities. The main Marvel Comics universe has always been called Universe 616. The Marvel Ultimate Comics have always been called Universe 1610. Kang's Comic Home universe is 6311. I could go on. So in the real world cataloging of all these universes, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has always been categorized as Universe 199999. But within that universe, we've heard fictional characters within the Marvel Studios movies refer to the MCU as Universe 616. We first heard Mysterio reference the MCU as 616 in Spider-Man Far From Home.
This is Earth, Dimension 616. I'm from Earth 833.
And then in Multiverse of Madness, we heard Dr. Christine Palmer categorize the MCU as 616 as well.
And we've designated yours 616.
Now, this is already a little weird because we know that Mysterio was lying and making up this whole thing about him being from a parallel universe. So how he and Universe 838's Christine Palmer both came to call the MCU 616 is currently unknown.
Nobody knows.
But the point remains that these in-universe numeric categorizations are merely labels. It's not like the Celestials slapped a big old number on the side of a universe when they got done making it.
Not like they put the floor numbers on the outside of the building.
So, in terms of in-universe canon, which means the perception of the fictional characters themselves, they might categorize the MCU as Universe 616, and other fictional characters from other universes within that multiverse may have a different number for that particular universe. I'd assume that Spider-Man 2099 has his own personal database, and that he just happens to categorize it as Universe 199999. And keep in mind, Spider-Man 2099 likely doesn't have access to the entire multiverse, but perhaps only the universes that are part of the web, universes that have a Spider-Person. So that alone could throw off the numbering order. But I do think that it's interesting that Sony decided to refer to the MCU as 199999 instead of 616. With Sony Pictures and Marvel Studios working together when it comes to their Spider-Man content, you'd think that they'd refer to the MCU by 616 since that's what Kevin Feige has decided to call it. Now Feige likely decided to call the MCU 616 because for one, 199999 is way too long to say, and 616 is synonymous with being the main Marvel timeline. And with Feige making the Multiverse Saga of the MCU, he likely wanted to make it clear that the mainline MCU we've been following for all these years is the main Marvel movie universe. But with Sony not referring to the MCU as 616, that makes me question how closely they may or may not be working with Marvel. I mean, let me be clear. The animated Spider-Verse films are not Marvel Studios projects like the live-action Tom Holland Spider-Man films are, but with Across the Universe directly referencing an MCU film and an MCU character with Doctor Strange, you'd think that that would mean that they would at least talk about where and how they're referencing one another and connecting their stories. But then again, since Sony Pictures does own the live-action Spider-Man films such as No Way Home, maybe that gives them the right to reference it in animated films without permission from Marvel, despite it being an MCU film and a Multiverse Saga film. But I got my fingers crossed that Marvel and Sony do have plans to work together more and more for some fun multiversal crossovers. Not only someone like Kang being able to be a villain in the animated Spider-Verse films, but maybe even characters like Venom getting to pop up in Secret Wars. So let me know what you think. Do you think that the animated Spider-Verse films are loosely based on the MCU's Multiverse Saga? Could we see Kang pop up and Across the Spider-Verse and maybe even be the villain of Beyond the Spider-Verse? Could we see a team of Spider people go toe-to-toe with the Council of Kangs? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, or you can @ me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.